Which actors are in and which are out? Who will take the reins? And how does AI factor into all of it? Terminator 7 isn't in production yet, and here's why.
That future never happened, because I stopped it.
When Terminator Dark Fate reared its head in 2019, it actually had a lot going for it. One of the biggest selling points was the return of Sarah Connor herself, the incomparable Linda Hamilton, as she reunited with Arnold Schwarzenegger's T-800 on screen for the first time since Terminator 2 Judgment Day. With the film led by the brilliant Mackenzie Davis as brutal human-machine hybrid Grace, all the ingredients were there for Dark Fate to succeed. The direct sequel to T2 ignored all the films from the last 20 years, forging a new path involving a completely different robotic threat to humanity called Legion. Same threat, different name. But by the time the credits rolled, Dark Fate had backed itself into a strange corner after killing off both Grace and Schwarzenegger's domesticated T-800. Not to mention John Connor himself. Davis was meant to return in future sequels as Grace, but it would be a new version of the character raised by both Sarah Connor and future Resistance leader Danny Ramos, played by Natalia Reyes. During Davis's 2020 appearance on the Happy Sad Confused podcast, she revealed how her robot-killing hybrid machine was originally set to return in the planned sequels. It was going to be a sort of timeline thing. Will there be another timeline that you'd explore? Like, there's no resurrection, but she came from the future. All these reboots are enough to make Doc Brown's head hurt. So many timelines. Unfortunately for the franchise, Dark Fate wasn't the only recent Terminator installment to do poorly. A decade prior, the Terminator saga was going strong, with a potential blockbuster trilogy spawning out of the 2009 film Terminator Salvation and the television series Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles on the air. It seemed as if fans of the franchise were set to get plenty of future Terminator content. Unfortunately, the Sarah Connor Chronicles was cancelled after its second season, and despite the planned Salvation sequels, the Halcyon Company was forced to sell the franchise rights after a series of financial troubles. This eventually led to Skydance and Paramount teaming up to produce the Terminator Genesis reboot, which recast Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese, now played by Emilia Clarke and Jai Courtney, sparking a new timeline with hopes of another trilogy. Unfortunately, Genesis wasn't well received and all planned sequels were soon cancelled. Strangely, franchise co-creator James Cameron praised Genesis ahead of the film's release, calling the film the beginning of a franchise renaissance. Well, in a way it was, just maybe not the way Cameron had originally hoped. Following the disappointment that was Genesis, Cameron returned as a co-writer and producer for Dark Fate, though even his presence couldn't save the movie from becoming a disaster. Despite previously praising both Terminator Genesis and Terminator Dark Fate as being the true third Terminator movie, producer James Cameron has since spoken out against the latter installment, telling Deadline prior to the release of Avatar: The Way of Water, "I think I'm actually reasonably happy with the film. I think the problem, and I'm going to wear this one, is that I refuse to do it without Arnold." The producer went on to explain that bringing back Schwarzenegger as a T-800 and director Tim Miller's desire to bring back Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor was, in his opinion, the biggest issue. He admitted, "It was your granddad's Terminator movie, and we didn't see that." Unsurprisingly, Cameron fails to note longtime franchise fans' criticism of the film's new leads, the killing off of Edward Furlong's John Connor, or even the half-hearted attempts by Dark Fate to do the same thing that the first two Terminator films did over 30 years ago. It wasn't the cast that was the problem, it was a lack of creative vision. Cameron told the Smart Less podcast back in 2021, "If I were to do another Terminator film and maybe try to launch that franchise again, which is in discussion but nothing has been decided, I would make it much more about the AI side of it than bad robots gone crazy." While that seems like a step in the right direction, it might not be enough. James Cameron isn't the only one to feel that Arnold Schwarzenegger's involvement in the last two Terminator movies was a mistake. It seems like the Governator thinks so too. After heels of his recent 3-part Netflix documentary, Arnold, the former Terminator star, revealed that he won't be back for another installment.
Hasta vista, baby.
Previously, Schwarzenegger has been involved in every theatrical installment of the franchise, with the exception of Terminator Salvation, since he was serving as the governor of California at the time, although his likeness was still used in the third act of the film. Arnold told The Hollywood Reporter in May 2023, "The franchise is not done. I'm done. I got the message loud and clear that the world wants to move on with a different theme when it comes to the Terminator. Someone just has to come up with a great idea." The actor went on to elaborate that he loved the first 3 movies, but that the last 2 weren't well written. Of course, nobody can blame Arnold for not wanting to be involved in a franchise he helped ignite, but you'd think that he might have wanted to voice those concerns years ago. While it's hard to think about what the future of the Terminator franchise could look like without him, both Terminator Salvation and the television series Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles told interesting, unique stories without Schwarzenegger's involvement. Continuing without Arnold may not be ideal, but it's certainly possible. Possibly the most shocking news in the development of a possible seventh Terminator movie came from James Cameron himself, following his appearance at Dell Technologies World 2023. According to a tweet by an employee who works for Dell Technologies, Cameron let slip that he began writing the next Terminator movie months prior, but that he's waiting for new developments on the fast-changing AI landscape before he gets too deeply into it. No doubt the rise in artificial intelligence as of late certainly makes the world of Terminator feel a bit more real, and might even make continuing the series a bit more complicated. Nevertheless, Cameron, who wrote and directed the Terminator and its sequel Terminator 2 Judgment Day before stepping away from the series, has progressively gotten more involved in the franchise in recent years. He first helped promote 2015's Terminator Genesis and then produced and contributed to the story of Terminator Dark Fate. Maybe after so many failures and creative differences from the franchise's original intent, Cameron is finally ready to fully take back the reins and restore his original creative vision. But given how long fans waited for a sequel to 2009's Avatar, it's entirely possible that we could be waiting a whole decade for another Terminator movie. Who knows, you may even want to see the next 3 Avatar sequels through first before pursuing another science fiction epic. Either way, Cameron returning as a primary screenwriter sounds like good news, even if his work on the last movie wasn't remotely his best. The big question when considering a 7th installment in the convoluted Terminator series is whether or not the next movie should be a reboot or a continuation. Now, it's unlikely that whatever sequel James Cameron comes up with will connect to any of the previous entries or the failed trilogies. Terminator Salvation connects too much to Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines. Terminator Genesis built its own revised timeline, with actors uninterested in returning. And Terminator Dark Fate was largely hated by fans. So what could be next? Because of the nature of the series, alternate timelines are not outside the realm of possibility when it comes to another Terminator movie. For years, fans have hoped for a dark and gritty look at the future war that Cameron teased all those years ago. And now that he's back helming the franchise, maybe it's time to see that war in full view going forward. It would be an easy way to connect the original films to Cameron's new vision, after all. And highlighting Kyle Reese again would be a nice change after so many years of following Sarah. Conversely, if Cameron wants to further explore our modern concepts of AI, then setting the film in the present might make more sense. How could Skynet be born now? That's a question worthy of an answer, even if Genesis already provided one. Either way, a reboot is necessary since Linda Hamilton isn't particularly interested in returning as Sarah Connor either. At this point, Terminator 7 could happen, but it doesn't seem very likely. After the disappointing box office reception for Dark Fate, making just $261 million on a $185 million budget, it seems like the franchise's fate has been sealed. It's disappointing since James Cameron was intending to write future sequels after producing Dark Fate, and given the franchise's recent reliance on CGI, it would have been interesting to see if Cameron could have brought it back to its practical effects roots. We all remember when we first saw a fake Schwarzenegger head cut out its own eyeball in the Terminator. Arguably, a bigger question here is whether audiences even want to see a Terminator 7. Actress Mackenzie Davis thinks that audiences are bored of the franchise, which isn't surprising since the 6 films have exhausted a number of different methods of continuation. Sequels, hard reboots, and soft reboots. As Davis told NME in 2020, "I really loved Dark Fate, and I'm so proud of what we did. But there wasn't a demand for it at the box office, and to think that there'd be a demand for a 7th film is quite insane. You should just pay attention to what audiences want. Maybe the issue isn't that fans don't want more Terminator stories, they're just holding out for good ones, and there hasn't been one for quite some time."
There is no fate but what we make for ourselves.